I have here a very nice opportunity to speak with Michael Scheuer, who was the first head of the CIA's Bin Laden unit and also an agent for the CIA for 22 years. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for answering some of my questions. Where were you on September 11th?
I was at CIA. I was in an office away from my main office, and was doing some work there. And a friend of mine called on the phone and said, "Turn on the TV," and I turned on the TV just as the second plane hit the building. So that was kind of my story of the day that the attacks happened.
And what was the proximity to the Pentagon?
We were far away. We're across the river. We were nowhere near the Pentagon, really.
When you saw those planes going into the building, what came to your mind?
In my own mind, I was certain that it was Al-Qaeda from the start.
You were sure it was Osama bin Laden?
Yeah. We had captured documents back in 1995 that they were training pilots to drive a 747 into the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. So that method of operation had clearly been on their agenda for 4 or 5 years previously.
So you were absolutely clear about the perpetrators?
Yeah, I think that we had, by 9/11, really delineated for the United States government that Al-Qaeda was unlike any other group that we've ever called terrorist organization in terms of its sophistication, in terms of its ability to turn American power on America. And so I didn't have any doubt.
Do you think that Osama bin Laden knew that he would topple those buildings, or what do you think? Do you think that the collapse of the towers exceeded his expectations?
Yeah, I think very clearly, and it's very helpful because we have it from his own mouth. We captured a tape, the military did in Afghanistan, of him talking to a visiting Saudi cleric, and he said, you know, with my expertise, I thought we would destroy everything above the level where the planes hit. But I never expected, this is bin Laden speaking, I never expected the whole building to collapse. So yes, it was beyond his expectations.
So I don't really like to give too much airtime to the conspiracy-minded folks, but what do you, in brief, what do you have to say to the 9/11 truthers, as they're called?
I think, you know, everybody in America is entitled to their opinion and their beliefs. I just find zero credible evidence to support their position. It strikes me more as an assertion than it is any kind of reasoned argument. But that's the nature of public discourse. And I also think that the U.S. government, at least in my experience, classifies way too much information. I think it's perfectly plausible for the government to better inform the United States, the people of the United States, than they have to date. But as far as I'm concerned, the truthers they just don't have any evidence.
Do you think that there's any other information that the government is not telling us? I mean, for instance, with the 9/11 Commission, I mean, is there anything they're not telling us, in your opinion?
Not so much in regard to the attack. I think that has been pretty well documented by the 9/11 Commission. But the reason I resigned from the agency was because they haven't leveled with the American people about who knew what before 9/11 and who failed to take action that may have preempted 9/11, not because we knew about it, but because we could have destroyed the people who were planning it. So I think America really needs to have the archives of the 9/11 Commission, which contain an enormous amount of paper, released. That was part of the deal, that all of that information was redacted by the government, so the remainder is perfectly unclassified. But so far they haven't released it.
Do you think that Osama bin Laden is still alive?
Yeah, I think it's wishful thinking to think that he's dead, for a couple of reasons. First, they would be celebrating in their culture his death and grieving at the same time because he had become a martyr. Second, NSA is very good at, the National Security Agency is very good at voice prints, and has consistently validated the fact that bin Laden's messages are indeed the man we've been recording since '96 or earlier. And third, Al-Qaeda has now a 15-year record of never trying to hide anyone's death. They publish the fact that someone gets killed, one of their major commanders, and announce his replacement. So you take all those three things together, and I think it's more wishful thinking to believe that he's dead.
In the aftermath of September 11th, there's been the sort of much shown footage of the Palestinians celebrating in the street. Off camera, we had a brief conversation. Can you elaborate a little bit as to what you understood?
Yeah, I had on that subject. I had just a brief conversation with a senior reporter for one of the Canadian broadcasting companies. And he said that at the time he was stationed in Palestine and Israel, and on 9/11 he wanted to go across the border into Gaza and see what the reaction was. And he was warned by the Palestinian authorities that if he reported or filmed the true dimensions of those celebrations, that he would never be allowed back into the territories, because he told me, at least, the dancing in the street, the rejoicing, was much bigger than anything Americans have seen on television.
So it was kind of like a Mardi Gras or a Rio de Janeiro kind of situation?
Well, I don't really know that for a fact, but what I'm certain of is he told me the dimensions of the celebration, the number of people participating, was far greater than anything Americans saw on tape.
Al-Qaeda today, 10 years down the road, what kind of a threat are we really facing? I mean, how big and how wide is this front sort of forming?
Well, I think we're facing two levels of threat. One from Al-Qaeda itself and its allies, and one from the people they inspire. Al-Qaeda remains a very effective, although limited, organization. Osama bin Laden remains in command of it. I think we have made too much of the idea of independent franchises for Al-Qaeda. It is certainly their main military activity is to attack our army forces in the field, our Marines and Army people, and to plan another attack in the United States. When or if that comes off, I guess, is unpredictable, but certainly to assume they're not planning it is wrong. I think we're now up against a very serious threat in terms of the people that Al-Qaeda has inspired, but really doesn't have a command and control relationship with. We've seen people like Major Hassan in Texas, the man who almost blew up the truck in Times Square. These are people who were assimilated into U.S. society, who were prospering here, and who took action not because they disliked American society, but rather felt some sympathy with people in Iraq or Afghanistan. So I think the second tier of threat is very, very dangerous and growing. And I'm afraid that we'll end up having much more violence on our streets than we have to date.